It means we are starting to record. Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We have people joining us on Zoom. First off, thank you guys so much for taking your lunchtime to join us today. Super excited with our Rockstar panelists. And for those of you that attended last month, we are hoping that we continue this every month moving forward. So this month, I have 5 awesome people that are going to share their wisdom with us. And the topics we're going to be covering is coaching clients around inspection reports, understanding the new build process for your buyers, and finding your client's motivation, whether it be list price or offer price. So before we get started in our topics, if you guys want to each go down the row and introduce yourself and how long you've been in real estate and maybe why you chose to get into real estate.
Misty McIntosh, and I've been doing this for 6 years now, and I've always wanted to own rental properties and multiple houses, and found that this is a great way to find my own deals and help other people.
My name is Philip Reed, and I've been doing this for 9 years now. I was originally a teacher, and we kind of messed around with property as far as like buying older properties and flipping them, and it was just always an interest to me, so that's why I jumped in, and then I've been full-time now for about 6 years.
I'm Ashleigh Jones, and this is my first year in real estate. Next month is my 1-year anniversary. I feel really unworthy of being up here because I look out here and see all these people that help me all the time. So thank you for that. But I was a teacher for 15 years, but my husband and I also owned a couple small businesses, one of them building houses. And so we just realized that I don't know, after 2020, that I needed to be a bigger part of the businesses, and real estate was one way for me to get involved, know what's going on with the market, and to just kind of help out with selling the houses.
My name is Stacy Hicks, and I had to think back when I got into real estate, and it was in '03. And I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, and I just wanted to do a little something on the side. So it's a funny story. Jim Bolin was actually the broker at the first company I went to work for, and we were talking about my whys, and at the time it was to buy furniture and take vacations. And now it's turned into an awesome career.
My name is Ronessa Williams. This is my 6th year in real estate. And as cliche as it sounds, I remember being like 10 years old and, love decorating and, stylizing the house and everything else. And then I remember we started searching for a house at the age, I was 12. Deborah Parrish was actually our agent. And I remember from that point on, I was like, I'm going to be a real estate agent one of these days. But anyway, so I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, and we have a working farm. And so once my daughter went into preschool, I was like, it's time to get into this field. So, and I love it. I mean, it's just great.
That's awesome. Okay, and so for any questions that you guys have, just write them down and then we'll do questions at the very end. So the first topic, when we talk about inspection reports. So we all can agree that inspectors are paid to go into a house and inform the buyer of everything that is wrong with the house. Whether it may be a large or small concern, reports can vary from 30 pages to over 100. So when typing up an inspection notice, how do you coach your clients on what is important to ask the seller to fix? And I don't care who takes it away if you have an input.
Little bit of insight. My husband is a home inspector, so I get to see all those reports, the good, the bad, the ugly. Some of them are mine, some of them are not mine. I'm like, whew, what was that? So I get to see a lot of them. My 5 things I've got from Jen. So roof, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and structure is what I would advise people to focus on. But then just knowing your clients and what is their comfort level. Can they handle some small repairs? Then those are things, I wouldn't concern myself with asking for to have done. But mainly it just depends, who am I working with? What can they take on for themselves? What are they comfortable doing and doing well, or even knowing resources. If I've got people that can, if I can give them a good electrician or a good handy person or something, does it make sense to lose a whole house that you fell in love with over some repairs that can be done? So my husband, being a home inspector, he looks at everything. He works on houses too. We own rentals and do all that. So he looks at everything as, it can be fixed. Yeah, just everything could be fixed. Just where are you at with it?
I'm going to turn this into a little bit of a conversational panel too.
Cool, love that.
Anyways, in response to that, it also depends on the terms of your contract. So if you are a buyer and you're in a multiple offer situation, obviously you don't want to, be asking for every single thing on the inspection report. You want to ask for things that are very specific and, hazardous safety issues to the house. So basically, the home inspector that I personally use is somebody who was an ex contractor. I mean, that's what he did for his whole entire life. So he knows every single thing about the ins and outs of the house. He's not just an inspector that got his license online. So when he goes in there, he's really good about not freaking out the buyers. And if it is a major concern, he will state that, but he will also say, this is how you can fix it. If it can be fixed, this is roughly what it's going to cost. That way it doesn't scare them to death. And then all of a sudden we've got, like, well, we just don't feel comfortable with this house. We want to move on to the next one when it really isn't that big of an issue. So, but anyways, it's basically kind of one of those things that, as far as a buyer standpoint goes, I mean, you've just got to kind of be reasonable and just, lay out the expectations up front.
I'd also preface that with, I try to explain to my clients beforehand what's going to happen, because I think a lot of our clients, they see a 40 or 50 page report and immediately freak out. Well, if they know they're going to get a 40 or 50 page report, it's a little bit easier to go through. We also build spec built homes along with renovating stuff. And I think it's really crucial for new agents, if you have time, to get with somebody who does that and walk through a house that's in the framing process, walk through a house that's being wired, walk through a house that's being duct, have the HVAC being put in, insulation. Familiarize yourself, so when something pops up like that, you can just say, well, here's what has to be done and here's what's wrong with it. I think a lot of the problems start with the agents not understanding what is going on. And I know that's a total new ballpark for some people to get into. But again, if you are confident and can keep your client kind of upbeat and going, and you can explain to them, well, this is probably what's going on with the structure or whatever that they see, that also seems
I just want to
to
interject
help.
something really quick.
Yeah.
This is one thing I do say to all of my buyers. Even brand new builds have several
Yes.
page inspections.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So you'll have
absolutely.
like leaky faucets or like the hose on the back, where it attaches to the house sometimes, is wrong. So if they go in there with that expectation that even brand new builds have issues, then it kind of softens that blow.
And I'm just going to piggyback on what everyone else has said. Another thing that I have found is fabulous is have the buyer present at the end of the home inspection and actually meet and talk with the home inspector. I know that some of preferred home inspectors that I use, they are so good about walking through the report, pointing out this is maintenance, this is what you can do to the home, this is an easy fix, it'll cost $10, you could do it yourself. And so it's walking through everything that's found. So when we go to write the report, nothing is a major deal, even if something may be a more expensive fix. They're more knowledgeable and feel comfortable with everything about the house.
I just wanted to say too, that one of my first inspection reports that I got back, I was just a nervous wreck. I knew that it would be really long, but I was like, oh my goodness. And I mean, for one of the crawl spaces, and this was not a new construction, but it had some mold in the crawl space. So I always recommend, I'm new, so I do this all the time. I call several people and say, hey, here's an issue. What do you think? So my sponsor, Allie, that's here, thank goodness for her, because she's like, oh, mold is not an issue. Like there's an easy remedy. It doesn't cost much. And I was like, oh, but for somebody who hasn't sold a lot of homes or has, a buyer that's like, oh my gosh, mold, the word mold is going to freak them out. Mildew. Yeah. And so, I have several people that I call, and then I also try to figure, before I even talk to somebody about what the inspection report says, I try to have people in my back pocket that I'm like, hey, I know that they will be able to be a resource for you. It's really not as big deal as it seems. And that just kind of seems to soften it, as well as if I feel prepared to talk with them about what the inspection report says.
So Misty, I love that you mentioned the 5 big categories for yourself. And I'm going to repeat those because in case anybody didn't get this written down: electric, roof, plumbing, HVAC, and structure. Those are the 5 main. Now, do you guys all kind of go after those 5 main as well? Are those kind of the bigger issues that you're seeing? Or is there anything else you would add to that list that you think are
Mold and mildew for sure.
mold and mildew?
And the whole issue with vapor barriers, because so many, it's half and half. Don't you agree? Where like some people are like, vapor barriers are great if they're installed 100% correctly. They are also not great if they're not installed correctly and will create more moisture and mildew. So it's a whole thing with, trying to get everybody's expectations and all that on the same page.
Is there anything that you see on inspection reports that are like, oh, that's not a big deal? Like common things that you see on inspection reports that are automatically, that's an easy fix that you educate your clients on?
I think everybody's toilet
Grab a
is
mic.
loose.
Yep. thank you.
I think everybody in here, your toilet is loose. Just go home and check it. I'm sure it is. So you don't know it, but your toilet's loose. Yeah. So go look at that right now. No, it's messed up. No.
I'd say your typical plumbing leaks. People don't ever check their crawl space. I don't know how many people have told me like, "Oh, my crawl space is fine," and then $5,000 later, we're fine. Drywall cracks seems to be pretty common. Flooring, tile crack. I don't know, a lot of that stuff.
And I just think it's setting up the expectations with your buyers when you go in and start the inspection process. There are going to be items that come up that are maintenance, and then there are going to be items that come up. And if there's a safety issue, something's hazardous, or something is truly not performing as it is intended to, those are the things that we're looking for.
So what is your normal script when discussing the inspection process to your buyers? Do you have a normal spiel that you normally say without maybe not thinking it's a script?
I think that's what I say. Yeah, because I always lead with.
Hold on, hold on, we can't hear. We're gonna talk, but we'll get it at the very end, so. Okay.
But yeah, just I say we're going to get an inspector coming in here, and then they're going to they're paid to pick the house apart, but they're going to even, notice issues like the countertop that's peeling off, the Formica, or, the roof, everything, but that's just for our knowledge. And then it's our job to basically coach you through what to really look for and ask for in the, and then that's when I bring up, even brand new houses have, issues. So that's kind of where.
And then again, I just go back to, there are going to be pointers for you as a homeowner to help maintain your home. These aren't things that you have to do now, but they're maintenance versus what truly is wrong with your home.
Okay. GFCIs.
Her in every report.
Okay. So we'll move to the next topic, which I'm super excited about, for the new build process. So if you didn't miss out on introductions, Phil is building homes. Ashleigh, her husband, is a builder, and Stacy has worked with a builder primarily. So we have some great insight for this. So when we're talking about the new build process, is there a timeline that agents should be aware of so they can educate their clients more on this?
So I would say in the past, yes, but I have never seen such challenges as I have currently in the new home construction market. I mean, you name it, and it just seems like it's happening. Delays, material availability, sub availability, weather. Yeah. And so I would always say new construction was just the easiest sale you could make. And now I find it to be one of the most challenging to get to the closing table. I think that will change, but right now I think that's the environment.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, timelines are they're so hard to come by right now. And it depends also where you come in as a buyer's agent, where you come in at the process. So if the house is, near completion or it's already framed, I mean, if I were you all, I would see what you can find out about the builder. Do they normally keep their timelines? Do they normally have the same subcontractors? Because it really is all about relationships. So, if, I don't know, if there's a new build that's barely going up, I always recommend that you get with the builder and their agent. Usually their agent, they hire an agent because they need someone to be their liaison between the two because they are so busy trying to track down all those materials.
Yeah.
So I just think the more specific you can be on the build, the better. So I mean, from everything, from what type of shower door you're putting in to what kind of countertops you're putting, not only in the kitchen, but also in the bathrooms. And I always recommend having everything written up and signed by the buyer, by the seller, so that there are no surprises, because surprises usually aren't good in construction. So the more specific I feel that, so the buyer knows exactly what they're getting, what type of flooring they're getting in each room. I mean, all of those things are just so important. That way there are just no surprises at the end.
I agree.
Okay, cool.
I was just going to say really quick, I've got a buyer right now that's new construction. We started from the very get-go. I mean, the foundation, everything. And just this past 2 weeks alone, we've had to go with option B on flooring and stone. And because the other ones, they're like 6 weeks out, they're 8 weeks out, you know, and so that's very irritating for a buyer, obviously. So it's almost like right now, because of the amount of supply and demand problems, it might be easier to go ahead and just get those, option B and C, things picked out before you actually go to finish everything up, because we've just had a lot of unhappy buyers. So
Are there any certain materials that you're seeing big delays? I mean, recently I found out there's a paint shortage. So just little things like here you're not thinking of. Is there anything that you're seeing that are big delays right now?
Electrical is pretty hard to get at this point. We actually ordered all of our siding and windows in like February, and they
Wow.
were in my shop. So we kind of missed all of that. But windows, I think now are 10 weeks out because we had to order another set. But electrical boxes, breakers, and wire is extremely hard to get right now.
And extremely expensive.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got one client that buys new construction, and because he's going to use them for rentals, he wants that LVP, luxury vinyl plank, throughout, and so that's getting hard. So that's holding us up on some.
Wow. So what are some items that are important to know as a buyer's agent when educating your clients? So right now we talked about timelines and material shortages. Is there anything else that that we need to make sure our clients are aware of during this process?
Well, I think most of the builders are going to require a non-refundable deposit. And so they do need to have some money available, and it will vary depending on the price point of the home and if they choose to go with some different upgrades. I think the other thing is most of the builders in our area all have their own builder docs. And so you just need to read through those and become familiar with them. I know most of them now have clauses in there about parties working together to extend the closing date. I know we just even went under contract on one where the builder even put in there, product availability and pricing is all over the board. You will work with us on any price increases, and I will eat some of the costs. But if we have another huge increase, I'm going to have to come to you. And if we can't come to an agreement on price, I'll give you your money and you can walk.
So what does that conversation look like with your clients? Because they're going with any expectation, maybe it's a 200,000, and with all these price increases, how do you meet in the middle with all of that?
They just have to know that up front. And all of my clients, I have told them, save money. You know this ahead of time. The builder will try and work with us, but some things are going to be completely out of his control and our control. And so it's also a conversation that we'll really need to work with your lender on. Can we up your loan amount? So it's really everyone trying to work together, but everyone knowing it up front helps.
Hold on.
What's the price that you had to put down percentage wise for construction? Is there like a wide range with
I
builders?
think there's a wide range depending on the builder and depending on the price point of the home.
Ashleigh, Phil, do you guys have something you want to add?
We actually build spec built homes, and I learned from dealing with some deals with Stacy and Trendsetter Homes in Springfield that like we don't actually put ours on the market until we are drywalled. We realized early on last year that when people walk through them and they're in framing, they want us to move walls, and they want us, and once our framers are gone, they're gone. Like they don't come back. So then I'm the one that gets to move all that stuff, and I don't like doing that. So and honestly, what we have is all of our stuff's pre-ordered. So when somebody comes in, it's drywalled. It's like, here's the paint color, which paint's not hard to change, but like we've already ordered floors. Here's the carpet. Here's the cabinet. I mean, it's all just sitting there, like pieces of it. And we don't deviate from it. I mean, they buy it or we'll sell it to somebody else. We don't care. And we don't try to be difficult, but that's just not what we do. We build spec built homes. We have 3 plans. All the materials already ordered. So we don't really mess with, I mean, we don't care to paint it a different color, but like trim and all that stuff is it's just done. It is what it is. So we don't deal a lot with the custom built stuff. So we've got a little bit of a different process.
And we do a lot of spec that turn to custom, semi-custom, I should say. So what we do is, at first I started listing them, when the foundation's in the ground, and then I realized, well, you're right. That's just too much. Like, they want to change the whole plan. And a lot of times they don't realize, yeah, you want to move that wall, but we can't because it's a support wall or whatever. So what we always do is we sit down with buyers. I try to meet them in a house that's near completion so they can see our finishes. And we say, these are the things we're not going to change. We're not going to change the type of trim work that we do. We're not going to change, there are certain things we can't change, but then we do give a lot of choice. So what we do is we always, and this is just speaking for what we do, Third Day Built, we do a non-refundable deposit for all of the customs that they're wanting to do. So if they want to get out of the contract later, and we also have them sign something that says if it doesn't appraise at the listing price, which includes or if they're raising the price, we aren't going to cover that because they have, they've tried to do some customs. But that non-refundable deposit usually keeps them, there in the house if we're making a lot of changes, because it begins to be a lot of work trying to get around and find all the products that they want. That's how we handle that. But again, everybody does it different. And now I'm learning why a lot of people don't allow spec to custom, because it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think if you check out the MLS, most of our builders here in town have pulled all of their listings, and they're all going to listing at sheetrock stage. And part of that is product availability, but a huge part is they couldn't give pricing. They just can't give pricing right now. That's how volatile it is. And they weren't even getting quoted from some of their suppliers until like lumber dropped. That's when they started getting their pricing. So it's just been a weird ride this year. And the big thing with spec builders is they're like a machine or a wheel in motion. And so if you want to make a change, it's like sticking something in that wheel. And so that's why more of them have gotten away from making changes. That's really custom, and you need to go that route. Spec home builders used to give so many more options, it seems, and now they've really had to cut back on that just because of availability.
I agree with that. I mean, just even changing a doorknob, like color, like sometimes we can't even get them. So it's like, well, they're silver, but you want bronze and we can't even buy them. So yeah, it's a huge, like once your guys move to the next house or the next location they're going, they don't come back. And so then it falls on somebody else, and it costs money. I mean, it's costly.
And I think that brings up a great point, is so many buyers are like, well, that's just an easy change. Well, no, it's not actually,
nothing's
because
easy.
yes, a lot of these products are pre-ordered. And again, they're moving house to house to house, and they can't lose time and go back and change.
So
things.
just to give you an idea of that, we are building a 1380 square foot home with a walkout basement, 2-car garage. We paid like $1,800 to have these CAD drawings done. So like I can literally just hand the huge CAD drawings to the framers that come in, and I can just walk away from it. Like they just go. Well, they got it done framing, and I would blame it on myself because I didn't look at it, but looking at the plans, it looks fine. But when I walked into the master bathroom, which is what sells homes, the vanity usually is 22 inches with a little bit of overhang. Well, between the vanity and the shower wall was 16 inches. And we didn't catch it till it was framed. Well, guess where the framers were? Down the road, framing on the next one. So it took me, I don't know if you ever pulled apart nailed lumber, but with a Sawzall, and I mean, I bet it took 4 hours to move the entire bathroom back 2 feet. So when people come in and go, we'll move that wall, it's like, yeah, that's funny. It's just not, I mean, people think it's easy until they do it. And then they're like, this is miserable. So that's why you get a lot of that pushback. And that's why we started just saying, like, we're not making changes. You can buy it or whatever. It doesn't matter to us. So.
And I know a lot of the builders adding fences were huge because so many people wanted them, and so many builders are not even offering that as an option because they're not getting any extra money on the appraisals, and we're having a hard enough time with appraised value as it is. So you're starting to see some of those upgrades that are just not even available.
So what does the normal communication with the buyer's agent look like? Should they be communicating with the listing agent, or when is it appropriate to potentially talk to the builder during the transaction?
Yeah, on these, with the larger production builders, they never want to talk to a buyer. They just want the listing agent to communicate. Now, I have found some of the smaller builders are okay communicating with them, but the bigger they get, the more that's on their plate, just deal directly with the agent.
Yeah, and I would say I'm kind of in a weird situation because I am the listing agent,
Yeah.
but I'm also the construction coordinator for Third Day Built. So I know I can tell you that my husband would never want for the buyer to contact him directly. So anytime that, because like I said, I kind of cross the line a little bit because I am the listing agent as well as the contractor. So, but we always keep the buyer's agent. We usually have a text going. I hate group text, but that's what we have to do with the buyer, the listing agent, and the buyer's agent as well. So we're all on the same page. Just because when anybody talks to the builder directly or to the listing agent directly without having their agent involved, it just becomes a gray area. So I think you should just always have the agents involved every single time, no matter if it's a small builder, big builder. That's just the best way to go. So there's no questionable, conversation going on. And nobody intends for it to be a questionable conversation. It just ends up that way sometimes when everybody's not represented.
I am the general contractor and the listing agent, so I handle everything.
Thank goodness you have an admin to help.
There, I was gonna say, on mine representing the buyer, I have a transaction coordinator, and then the builder has a agent and a representative. So it's all of us on the same email, not the builder though, but so there's 4 of us held accountable, and we're staying on the same page. So
How do you suggest agents find more information about builders? Is there any place that they can go to find about builders in this area? If they have a client coming to them saying, hey, I want a new build, where do they look?
Yeah, HBA, you can go on Google reviews, but depending if they're here locally, I might recommend you go door knocking in neighborhoods where this builder has built. Do they stand behind their builder warranty? And you can get really good information just by doing that.
That's an interesting question. So builder warranty, explain that and what that normally is.
So builder warranty is a warranty that the builder provides starting from the day of closing through 1 year after closing. And typically they do give something in writing, and it's kind of just a broad overview of what they cover. I know a lot of the larger builders have like a warranty manager, and he's the person that you contact should they need anything. There are things that are not covered. However, most of the bigger builders will at least come out and take a look at it. I mean, I'm seeing that they're still covering like sheetrock repair and, grout cracks, but they aren't going to come back and do it multiple times. They may come once. So wait and do it all towards the end of the builder warranty and they'll fix it. If it's something major that someone's going to walk in and be like, who built your home? Then they'll probably come in and fix it sooner. So.
And most of I know speaking for myself that our builder warranty says that, you do a final walkthrough. On every, house that you purchase, you'll do the final walkthrough, and most things you should be able to catch. So, we're not going to come back and be able to, if there's a little paint chip, because that could have happened when you moved in. So it is the bigger issues like plumbing, HVAC, the electrical, all of those things. For our 1 year warranty, we cover all of that. But we even recently had someone move in and then they realized they didn't like the closet rod placement. Well, that's not something we're going to fix because that has nothing to do with the integrity of the home. We never want the integrity of the home compromised, but our reputation is important as well. So we want people to know that we're willing to work with them and fix things, even sometimes things that aren't covered in the warranty. If we're like, oh, we should, because you live and learn. Our warranty changes all the time because we realize, oh, we probably should have that in there, or, oh, we need to take that out because that really should not be in there. So, I think most builders want to work with their clients and they want their clients to be happy, because if you're going door knocking and people come door knocking to your door, you want them to say, oh yes, this is a builder that you want to use.
We talked about home inspections, and even on a brand new build, there will be a large list of on the inspection report. How often are you seeing a home inspection on a brand new build? And then should your clients do it or should they not?
I don't know. For us, it's usually probably half and half, and it depends on the lender. A lot of times the lender is going to require a private inspection. But I do think as an agent, if you have a new construction, it's important for your buyer to know that the house has already gone through several inspections, especially depending on the county. We're primarily in Christian County, and so we have inspections along the way the entire time. The house has to pass a final inspection before you can even get the occupancy to move in. Banks won't even lend money until you have the occupancy, which says the house is a go. But for us, we encourage our buyers to get a private inspection. So that way, even if later on they're like, oh, this plumbing's terrible, which that hasn't happened. But if they did, we could say, hey, even your private inspection said that it was okay and it passed. And honestly, sometimes they might catch something. A private inspection might catch something that the city might not catch or the county might not catch just because they're so busy in and out. So it does make sense just to protect. I like for the buyers to get one, even though we're the builders, because I feel like it even protects us further because there's a second eye looking at it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually, as a buyer's agent on new builds, always do a private inspection anyways, just because, that one time that we caught the hose bib that was not even installed correctly, it's like, okay, like there could be stuff like that popping up all the time that you have no idea. And they might be really little items, but maybe stuff that the builder and his team overlooked. So I tell the buyers, it's probably not gonna be very many things, but just for the peace of mind, it might be a good idea just to have it done. And that way you're at least covered.
Okay. Every time.
There we go.
Every time I have seen the reports, even though it's new construction, like I said, there are people that miss things. And again, going back to who is your builder, do they use the same contractors over and over and over again? Some may not. Some may have, this may be somebody's first time working with this builder, and they may not know for sure, what they're getting. I have seen them. I've seen some that are like, are you serious? Somebody walked away from that and thought that was a good job. And not just cosmetic issues, but I don't know what you call it, off the HVAC, I guess the main trunk. Like it's situated at least 6 inches to the side. And somebody like, oh yeah, that's fine. It was completely not fine. So I have, even in new construction, and I've had people that sell a house and they bought it new, didn't get an inspection. And then they're like, well, it was like that when we got it. It's always been that way, but it wasn't okay. So always, always, always get your own inspection.
And I would agree. I think it's a good idea on new construction because, people are human who are building these homes. So not everything does get done perfectly. There is the 1-year builder warranty, but it's good to have another set of eyes. I have had in our climate where, we have crawl spaces. So you do find mildew in crawl spaces on new homes. That's not uncommon. And the other thing with home inspections on new construction homes that you can get into is you just have to preface that even though the home inspector may say this needs to be done this way, if it's passed its inspections, the home is up to code. And so it is good, even if the home inspector says you should do something differently. A lot of builders are like, no, it's code. We did it to code. It's fine. So.
Sometimes the inspectors cause problems too. I mean, sometimes they don't know what they're talking about, is what I've noticed.
Not mine.
Not yours. We actually build in like Webster, Wright County area, so east of town. The first house we built 2 years ago, we went to the county and asked for them for a certificate of occupancy, and they asked me what that was. So we've had to kind of educate
okay.
them along the way. So I'd say if you have clients that are outside of Greene, Christian County, those areas that actually oversee that stuff, I would be real leery dealing with some builders in those directions, because like when I called and said what type of inspections we need to set up, he said footing and foundation. I said, that's fine. The city administrator showed up. I said, what do you expect? And he said, I just want to see rebar in it. They don't really know what they're doing. We build them to Greene County code. So like we try to do everything correctly, but I would be leery once you get outside of those areas that are kind of protected by the different permits and things needed. We really can build them without any oversight, which is what's that? Webster County's not as bad. They do come and check, and he's pretty sharp. Wright County, Texas County. So you're getting into like Mansfield, Hartville, Mountain Grove, Houston, those areas out east of town, Kabul. Yep. You can build anything you want without a permit. We can wire anything without an electrician. I mean, you can do anything you want. No one asks. And that goes for your septics, your plumbing, your water lines. So that's what we deal with every day. So
That's
yeah.
good to know.
Yeah. And Stone County is the same way. They don't have building codes in Stone County, which surprised me. But I do want to kind of echo what you said, that as builders, when it has passed city code, then they are doing their job. And a lot of times inspectors are going to say what their preferences are. Like maybe it should have a bit of a bigger HVAC. I hope I'm using the right words here, but it might not be required by the city. Like if there's not a return air vent in every bedroom, I mean, if it passed code with just having a couple return air vents, then the builder has done what they're supposed to do. The preference might be to have a return air vent in every bedroom. However, that's what you get when you do a custom, unless you talk about it ahead of time. So those type of things are just important to know, because I agree that a lot of times those inspection reports just get people worked up when they really should be there for peace of mind. So just knowing that ahead of time and educating ahead of time, is pretty helpful.
Okay, next topic, finding your client's motivation. So in this market, we have shadow inventory, meaning that sellers want to sell, but they're having trouble to finding a new home to move into. What does the conversation look like when discussing putting their home on the market? And how do you find their motivation in order to list now instead of waiting? Loaded question.
I call on God. Trust me, it's going to be there when as soon as we get yours under contract, yours is going to be available to you. You have to have faith. I kid you not. I literally did that with my daughter. She's like, they needed a bigger house. And she's like, but Mom, there's nothing. And as soon as we find it, it's gone. And I was like, just know that the right house is going to be there when you need it. And I kid you not, it was there. Now she'll be 4 blocks away from me, and her house is so it. I mean, just have, I don't know, have faith. Y'all can borrow my Bible if you need it. But just don't quit hustling. Don't quit looking. Call and door knocking. I know I've bugged some agents, even agents that are property managers. I'm like, you might have what I'm looking for. I'm just looking anywhere, and we'll find it. I just know we will.
Yeah.
I also have the conversation with the clients like, hey, if you want to sell, that's fine. But just, I'm kind of like the worst case scenario guy. I just say, hey, you could be homeless. And let's have a plan. I mean, as long as you can deal with that. We sold a client's house back in March, I think, in Stratford, and they close middle August in Republic. So that's how long it's taken us to find them a house to buy. I think we wrote 9 offers in the meantime, but we had a plan. They were going to move in with Mom and Dad, and they knew where everything was going. And so you just have to have those conversations up front with them, I think.
I was gonna say, we're also, as a listing agent primarily, accepting a lot more contingency offers now. Whereas used to, we wouldn't even give a second look at contingency offers. It's like, okay, once you guys go under contract, then we'll go ahead and proceed forward. But anymore now, as long as I like what I'm seeing on that contingency, say they're getting ready to go ahead and list and it's in a really desirable area and it looks good, then we're totally fine accepting a contingency offer. We haven't gotten hung with a contingency that's basically expired out in a really long time. So, but we're seeing a lot more of those. And yes, those expectations, the conversations where, it's like you might have to find a short-term rental. You might have to live with family for a little bit. I mean, just making everyone's timeline works is just going to have to be something that we're all going to have to get on the same page with.
Yeah, I would agree. It's really just setting those expectations up front and going over worst case scenario. I like that because you have to lay out all of the options because you never know what your clients are going to be okay with until you start to have that conversation. The other thing too is I always make sure that my sellers get pre-approved before we would even consider listing their house, because you'd be amazed that someone makes a late mortgage payment or something and it screws up their ability to buy. So you also need to walk down that path as well. Something that has worked really well as far as the new construction for me is that a couple of the builders that I have worked with, they do offer rentals for people who are buying homes through them. And so we've been able to transition someone selling their home into a temporary rental until their home is completed. And that's worked out really well too, because the timelines have been messed up. So if the closing date gets moved out, the buyers aren't stressed because they don't have to worry about where they're living. So, so that's been another great avenue as well.
I just agree with everything. I just think it's always important to be proactive rather than reactive. So I always give the worst case scenarios as well, just because a lot of people are wanting to sell so they can get top dollar, which is great. But if that means they're going to go have to live in a rental for a year while they're building, or 2 years, or whatever they might be doing, does that really make sense? And you don't want to tell people, does that make sense? Because you want to be able to list their house, but at the same time, you want to do your clients well. You don't want them to later on be like, man, that was a terrible choice. So I just always try to give them worst case scenarios. And then when that doesn't happen, then they think it's fantastic. So.
And so then in that initial conversation, what questions are you asking to find out what their motivation is for moving? Are they telling you right away, this is why they're wanting to list their house? And what are those different motivations that you're hearing of why they're wanting to potentially sell? Money? Okay. Anything else on that? Or, okay.
Well, I was just going to say, I've had several people, yes, they want to make top dollar, but then they're paying off debt and kind of getting a fresh start. And maybe they want to move into somewhere temporary while they kind of regroup and figure out where they want to land. So.
And school districts, I think, have been a big thing. I've had a lot of people that want to get into certain school districts. So I think it's important to know also if the school districts are going to accept a contract that maybe they haven't moved in, because we have this coming up right now. They're able to move into a subdivision, but they aren't able to move in until maybe September. Well, they don't want their kid to start in a different school. So having those conversations, even calling schools and seeing if they are going to accept a contract as the place of residence, those are important conversations too, because those are my two, or would be money and school district.
I do a lot of like farm and rural listings. So a lot of my clients are older and looking to downsize. You know, they're getting in their 70s and 80s and they don't need 100 acres to take care of anymore. So this is the perfect market for them to be able to capitalize on their proceeds and then buy a smaller home somewhere else in a subdivision or whatever. You know, so that's kind of some of their biggest motivations. And then, you know, also I've seen a lot of people too, where school district used to be a huge thing out in my neck of the woods, but anymore I'm getting so many clients in from out of town who are actually homeschooling. So a lot of those listings that I'm kind of been like, I don't know if the school district, but in the long term or the long run, it's not even mattering, you know? So yeah, because of COVID and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, and I do a lot of rural property as well out our direction, and we have a lot of people that are capitalizing on the market, selling, and then they're living in campers. I mean, they're like, we're gonna go live in a camper or build a shop home, and I mean, I've seen just tons of that this year.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
Seen out of state because people can work from home. So getting the pay from another state and the low cost of living here in Missouri. So
Getting the best of both worlds.
The other thing I think is a lot of my clients really just want a little bit of land. I mean, I'm hearing that all over the place. And so I think it's important to, Allie has called me about this several times, but it's really important for people to realize that if you buy land, depending on where it is, the cost of septic, the cost of a well, a lot of times they don't realize that. And that's going to eat up a lot of their budget. And so having those conversations ahead of time about what that's going to look like, or if a client or if an agent's going to be involved when they start to build, that's a huge conversation I think to have as well if they're wanting land.
Good point. So on the other hand, for the buyer's motivation, what does the conversation look like removing the fear of potentially overpaying for a home? And then also, what do you say when they're wanting to ride out the market? So you can sell for top dollar, but then you're gonna have to buy for top dollar. So how do you still have them buy or encourage them to buy?
I think the conversation that my brain goes to is, yes, the material and stuff is high and the buying is high, but if you look at like a longevity and you run the numbers of things, you know, obviously interest rates are going to go up. They can't stay that low forever. And my fear is, you don't know what it'll do, but 8 to 10% in interest is going to cost you a lot more over 30 years than $40,000 more on a house at 2.5. I mean, if you run the numbers, it's astronomical. And so again, educating yourself on what is that whole process. Okay, yes, this house is $30,000 higher. How long are you going to be here? Well, this is probably it. Okay, well, interest rates are 2.5%. So yeah, you're going to pay $30,000 more right now. But if you decide to do that in 2 years and interest rates 10%, what are you going to pay? So, I mean, again, it's kind of seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Anybody else in those conversations? So other than interest rates, has there been any other conversations of why they should go ahead and purchase now, or the fear of paying
Well,
buying a
again,
home?
with the building side of things, I think you can always buy cheaper than you can build. So, I mean, I think people understand that. And, again, when money's technically cheap, I guess interest is cheap, it really drives the market. And the thing with the small acreage stuff, I think with, where the COVID and pandemic thing went, people have started really thinking like, I don't know if I really want to live on top of my neighbor. You know what I mean? And I think that's really changed. You can't find small acreage parcels anywhere. So.
Wow. Any last thoughts you guys want to bring before we open up for questions from the audience? Okay. Who has oh, go ahead.
I think she made a really good point as far as understanding the build process too on acreage. I've got some people that go, well, I could just go build that on 5 acres. Yeah, that's fine. But what they don't take into account is, I've had clients where we've paid $10,000 to get power to the property. Like at $5 a foot, you got to really know where the power is in a rural setting. I know we talked to Stone County on a lake lot that my wife was interested in. And they said that the septic could be between $40,000 and $80,000 on the lake. So you really need to understand, because you're like, well, I could buy this lake lot for $50,000 and build, this is where we want to be, until they go, yeah, that septic could be $80,000. And then you're going, oh, okay, I'll reconsider that.
Yeah, your well is going to be what, like $10,000 at least. Your septic is going to be what, $10,000 to $12,000. You know what I mean? So that's just rough numbers that I tell my. Yep.
If you want your property, set back,
Well, and a soil test. They always need to get a soil test to see if what they're wanting to build is even possible, or even the layout of a land. My husband also has an excavation company, so people come out and be like, it's a very level lot, and then he comes out and he's like, oh, this isn't level at all. You are going to have to do a walkout, or so people don't understand that. And so if you have a client that is interested in trying to buy a piece of land and then build, those are all things they need to take into consideration, because it's a big process, and a lot of times they just don't realize that.
Or it's sitting on top of a big limestone rock.
Yes, exactly.
And then you have to bring in a driller truck. Yep.
That's so funny.
So the perk test, the percolation test is exactly what needs to happen during the home inspection period.
Yep. So. Okay, we'll open it up to questions. Who has a question? I'll bring a microphone around, and then we can ask questions this way.
Okay, mine's an easy question, but first of all, I understand knowing about the building thing. I've been I was an investor in 2003, so and ended up where I'm at now. My question is if you're a new realtor or looking to expand, where would you find, or what way would you go about finding builders that want to use you as a listing agent?
Well, when I first got my license, I saw that there were a lot of builders that had signs up, but they didn't have an agent. There were no agent signs on their properties. And so, just even calling them and saying, are you interested in working with an agent? I did that a couple times until I realized, wow, I'm too busy. I need to scale back a second. But that's what I did. But I'm sure you guys have a lot more experience.
I would say you can probably expect to take a commission reduction if working with a builder. I don't think they'll ever pay 3%. And I wouldn't fire myself, so ours are not available.
Yeah, I would just say there are trade-offs for working with builders, and it depends on how busy those builders are. I would say, yes, never expect to get a full commission. And if you start getting in with a builder who is producing a lot, it can easily I loved it, but that's what I did focus my business on. And so then resale kind of fell off, and I didn't pursue that side. So I think there's always a trade-off to consider. And as far as me getting in with builders, it just happened organically. You're just out and about, and I had a conversation with him, and he gave me an opportunity, and he introduced me to his friend who got into building, and then I worked with him. But I think there are a lot of smaller builders starting out. So I think even just calling on signs and creating conversations.
Okay, one follow-up question. You're talking about reduction in commission. What is the one commission that is kind of across the board okay?
I think that's all negotiated between you and the builder.
I think I think the other thing you're going to run into is like, if money gets tight, and I don't know if this happened to you, but I know some other builders, they'd hop from agent to agent because somebody else, let's say you say, I'll sell them for 1.5%. And then the next guy says, well, why is he doing that? I'll do it for 1. They'll leave you, in a split second when things are tight. But that's at least what I've noticed. But I know from talking, there's a girl, her name's Ashton May. She used to be an agent. She works for Jack Langley over at Gershman Mortgage, and she used to work strictly with Bustle and Michelle Cantrell, I think, when he was building. And she said it was just unreal, like the things they'd make you do, and they wouldn't pay you extra money. And I mean, she said it was just crazy.
Not all builders are the same, and not
No.
all are easy to work with. A lot of them are very demanding. And so again, it's all about just the relationships that you built. Because I have worked with a handful of different builders, and some of them have good reputations, and you just kind of figure out the path you want to go down and who you enjoy working with too.
I think you're right as far as other builders getting in. The numbers show that about in the 08, 09 time, 2010, 60% of the builders left Springfield and they did not come back. So they either decided they were going to retire or they were just done and moving on to another career. And really no one substantial has stepped back in, because we had a lot of builders back then, a lot of builders, and that really hasn't come back. So.
I've got a couple different ones, so we'll just see what happens, I guess. But so lumber prices, or at least on some of the lumber, has started coming back down. Have you seen that reflected in pricing yet, or are we kind of holding off and seeing what happens?
We have about a 6-month delay.
Okay.
So when they say the markets come back down, there's usually, I'd say at least a 3-month. Yes, they'll trickle down a little bit. We're in the middle of a build over in Marshfield for my parents on a 1,500 square foot house. Just lumber cost was $39,000. So it's really high.
I don't know. Just a question. We'll see where this goes, I guess. So what makes a good, we'll say, spec builder? What makes a good builder?
That's a loaded question.
I'm good at what you do.
I'm good because I oversee, and I'll get up at 6 a.m. and run around all the job sites. And when I notice they did something wrong, I tell them. We don't pay our guys until I say good enough. I think the oversight part of it is very crucial. And I think a lot of you would agree that, like, if you use the same guys over and over, they get an understanding of what you expect them to do. And when they don't do it, like I said, if something's not up to my satisfaction, which, I mean, we try to build a really nice home. So if I come in and I don't like the fact that the trim's crooked or this is wrong or that's wrong, we just don't pay them. I say, listen, as soon as you fix this, I'll hand you a check. But until it's fixed, you're not getting paid. And that gets them motivated in a hurry. And they understand, like, for them to come back, it costs them money. So they start paying attention, like, what am I actually doing? Because I don't want to have to come back. So that's pretty crucial, at least on our end.
I was just gonna talk about the lumber prices coming down and whatnot. And so the lumber may be coming down, but there's so many other components to the home that have also been going up. So as far as spec home builders go, I just don't foresee the pricing coming down dramatically.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say we built a 2,700 foot crawl space home with a bonus room, and then a very similar plan. 5 months later, no, probably 4 months later, we got the same lumber package. It was 50,000 higher. That was 2 weeks ago. So on the same house, square footage, just a little bit different of a plan, it was still $50,000 higher. And I'm sure you guys think about this too, but we just can't, okay, we'll raise it 50,000 because it won't appraise. So at that point, you just have to decide if you're going to eat some of the cost or just wait to build it, because I agree with that it's just not, like you said, yes, sure, the market, if you watch, it's going to say it's coming down, but that it takes a while to trickle to the Midwest, just like style.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I mean, I'm not saying we should be seeing those prices. I'm just trying to get an understanding from your perspective and expectations and those things.
In a conversation I had with one of the spec home builders, he was like, our margins have been so slim on some of these homes that we had put under contract. He goes, just to keep my company going, even if we did have a lumber drop, I've got to continue moving forward because I've got to run my business. and I can't live on such slim profit margins.
And I'll ask one more and let someone else go. We could talk about inspections a lot, but similar question from your perspective, you know, being the builder or working with builders really closely, what makes a good inspector?
What? He's cute. He's blonde. He's got blue eyes. Oh, I said that. Somebody like the people that work with builders have said, somebody that knows what goes into the process of the building, the electrical, all of that, and understands it so that they don't cause alarms like, oh, this is double tapped and you're scared. Like, what is that? Is my house going to burn down? But yes, somebody that can explain to you what this is. Is it an easy fix? You know, if not, here's somebody that can do it. It'll maybe cost you $40. Somebody that can advise you and help you out. Every house they're going to find something. And if you get a home inspector that doesn't find anything, we need to talk. I'll send my guy back out. But just somebody who can walk you through it. What is it? How serious is it? What can you do to fix it? Stuff like that. Somebody that's available to talk. Not just email you over a report and let you try to figure it out on your own. That if you've got questions, you can reach out and say, hey, what does this mean? Because sometimes we don't know. When I first started, I didn't even know what some of this stuff was. And maybe I couldn't call the home inspector and get a hold of him and find out, well, what does this mean? I don't even know how to advise my clients because I didn't know a lot about building. So.
Like I said, I like a lot of, bigger companies, but the guy that I use primarily he's just one guy. And he, like I said, he's got a lot of years of construction background. So he can go into a house and let you know if it's just a settling crack, or if that settling crack is due to something else beneath, you know what I mean, that needs to be addressed. He can tell you, he goes in the crawl space and, say you've got some rotten, floor joist or, sill plates or whatever. I mean, if they need to be, just completely torn out, or if they need to be, just sistered in with some other boards, he'll let you know. And he's the type of guy too, that whenever my buyers and myself, we have questions, we can just call him directly and figure out exactly what's going on with it. So somebody like that who knows the background is my number one go-to. Like I said, because obviously, some of these guys just get licensed over, online, and then they think they know what they're doing, but they really don't. And so it's just those can be deal breakers for sure.
So do you guys use a strategy sometime, price reduction in lieu of repairs on inspections? I've used that a couple times and it's worked fairly well because it may be an older seller that doesn't want to mess with that. We know it needs to be done. We can do it. Let's reduce $1,000.
I would say yes, as long as it depends on the loan, obviously. I mean, there's some things that the lender requires if it's a government loan, VA loan, USDA, that would have to be done. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times they just, you'll have sellers that say, I don't want to do it. I'll just give them $2,500 and you go on. It's a great solution, honestly.
Probably used it 3 or 4 times recently and it's worked really well. And sometimes, it's an item that maybe you wouldn't do anyway. You point it out and get a dollar value for it. Then they can spend it if they want to.
Yeah, I think we do that a lot too. I mean, as long as, both the buyer and seller are happy with the amount negotiated, then yeah, it's a win-win because then, no one has to get in there and make sure that all these things are getting done, to keep track of invoices and receipts and, it's just all done and clean at the end of the day. So,
well, and some of the repairs we like to call homeowner specials, where they're just like slapped together and you look at it and you're like, what the heck? My 5-year-old could do that. Like, and so it's like, if they hand them money, it's just done. Or if they want something replaced and they replace it with something that the buyer doesn't want or doesn't need, then they're tearing it back out. It's a great deal.
Hi. What's the relationship, conversations with appraisals with all this increase in pricing right now? Like, are you guys just talking to the buyer and saying, look, we don't know if this is going to appraise? Are you having to have the buyers have more money in case it doesn't? Or
I have over the last couple of months had so many appraisal issues, but I would say like 95% of them, we've gotten the buyer and seller to split the difference on that appraisal
Builder
value
or like,
versus, this is just resale,
okay.
appraisal value to list value or purchase value, I should say. I've even gotten a lot of buyers that have a lot of cash and proceeds to work with to waive those appraisal contingencies, which is crazy because never in a million years would we have ever thought that a buyer would pay a dime over appraisal
A house
value.
to live in.
But they don't want to settle for something else that they don't want. They don't want to have to start the search over again. They're willing to pay that difference. You know what I mean? And also, I'm having a lot of conversations with buyers and sellers too. With I feel like some appraisers are kind of like on board with like the increase in prices and like the increase in what this house would actually cost to replace it right now, to rebuild it, versus just some of these appraisers that I feel like are still stuck back 5 years ago, that they just want to kind of keep the market level. But I mean, we're seeing two totally different variations in the appraisals lately.
So that was more,
As far as our new builds are concerned, we pre-bought a lot of our material, so we were okay. But we have to take out like building loans for part of it, and so we get them pre-appraised. Like those walkout basements were appraised at 216. We're probably going to list them at 205, 209. So we know we're still below where they've already been appraised. We give them the plans, we give them all the material, we say, here it is. The difference between our building in Wright County and their building in Springfield is I'm buying lots for $3,000. So there's where all of our profit is. The profit's actually in the lot, not in the actual house. So we have a lot more room to manipulate
when you can
that
buy it like
because
you
we buy the
have
lots so
ahead.
cheap. Yeah.
But it's a per builder question. That would be a question that a buyer's agent wants to ask is what's going to happen with the appraisal when this is finished in a year or,
And I would say in their standpoint, if you're building an actual like custom, most people that build custom homes have extra money. So they're just like, you tell me what it's going to be, we'll figure this out. In our standpoint, that's not the case. We deal with a lot of 100% loan buyers. So we have to keep them under control, and we've manipulated material. So most of the time we'd OSB the roof, which is actually a worse material, but we've actually roofed them in 1x12s because they're cheaper. And it's actually a better material, but we've looked at all that. We don't use Advantech flooring. We've gone to a different type of flooring. So, I mean, you look at all kinds of crazy stuff.
I know that one of the builders here locally, because of the huge price increases that he's had to put on his new homes in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, his 2 contracts at the new price point, he was requiring $30,000 non-refundable, and it would go towards any appraisal issues. And what he's planning on doing with that is once you can get 1 or 2 good comps at the new price in that neighborhood, then you should be golden on the rest.
Right.
So it's just moving forward and getting over that hump. And then once you have those comps, then there shouldn't be an issue.
like the houses have gone up so much, the new builds just in the last 2 years,
Oh yeah.
the 6 months. So I'm just curious, like, I feel like there's a whole class on like more of this talk.
Well, if like anybody wants to come and like buy that first one for us cash, it'd make our life like way easier.
Right.
Like, 'cause then we'd have a comp. Like,
I'll
as soon
let
as
you
you can sell
know.
that
I'm
first
looking for 'em
one, you
too.
can start rolling them.
I have one more question. What are builders doing up front in reference to mold and mildew with the growing water concerns that we have? Because in my line of work, like when I go to list a house these days, I'm like, when's the last time you saw your crawl space? Because I sold you this house and it was dry, but it's probably not now. And we just need to go ahead and figure this out before we have a home inspection. That's my thing. What do you guys like think about that? As far, is there more standards being placed so that you don't have to go back within 6 months, or is it just like, oh,
I think a lot of the builders here locally are putting vapor barriers and gravel in the crawl space. But again, having a home inspector check and make sure things haven't fallen on top of it and they're not doing what they should do. So that is something that they've done, but also through your 1-year builder warranty, make sure your clients are checking their crawl space, because a lot of builders will, if they're having continual water issues in there, will install a sump pump. A lot of them already pre-wire for it. So that's one area that definitely take advantage of the builder warranty.
Yeah, we actually excavate it all to run to one point. So if we do have water, we put in sump pumps and vapor barrier. So
I have,
it's pretty standard. You're going to expect it. I mean, at least we do.
I have one more easy question. Building on less than 5 acres, you're not really allowed to do that, right? In Greene County, can somebody clarify that so I don't have to call the city? Because it came up in my head just recently. We were wanting to build a second house on 3 acres. That's really true, or do you have to make it a subdivision or change what's the deal with Greene County?
I don't know specifically for Greene County, but I know, so Christian County, which is not answering your question, that if it's any, you have to have 3 acres to have the septic system. So like we were looking at buying a 1.5 acre lot and it had what's the word? It was like you had to pump it all the time. It wasn't an actual septic system, but it's because it was grandfathered in. So if we wanted to put in a septic, which was going to be more sustainable, you were going to have to go and get that approved. So usually it's the 3 acres because of a septic system. But in Greene County, I mean, depending on if it's, I don't know. I mean, it would depend on if it's on city water. I don't know why that would make a difference at all.
It has to do with the septic, the amount of space you need and the well, because you can't just
Right.
like set the septic and drill the well right next to it. They don't.
You have to be what, 50 or 100 foot apart? Yeah.
But you can get approval for it.
So you can build.
Actually do it. You can probably do a shared septic too.
Yeah, and it depends on the placement of everything on that piece of property, I would say.
Ronessa, you mentioned it being kind of half and half on whether or not people think you should have the vapor barrier or not. And I feel like that's true. I went to an inspector panel where the inspectors all kind of said the same thing. A lot of them didn't agree with having them at all. So if there was someone that you trusted, and this is for all of you, to install a vapor barrier properly, who might some of those people be? Do you feel comfortable answering?
I mean, I was gonna say the reason that I said half and half is because really, like on a new construction, you're gonna be probably fine because everything is nice and fresh and new and clean and dry, you know, and then they're gonna make sure that it's all sealed up around everywhere. The problems that I feel like we're having are with older construction, you know, resales that, you know, previous buyers 5 years ago asked for a vapor barrier and then they weren't installed correctly. And then all of a sudden it just traps so much more underneath. So I've got a couple people that have done pretty good, but I don't know the long-term work on how those have actually, you know, held up.
Right, and a lot of new builds, and I know you're asking about the other, but they aren't required because the home is using newer materials that are a lot more efficient. So when a whole house is entirely spray foamed, not just in between, but the whole house is, they aren't expecting to have those, you know, those issues. But as far as a vapor barrier, I think it's also important because that work, I don't know, I think it's important for people to realize it's just plastic that's you're laying down. And so honestly, I feel like most people can do that. You have to just make sure the plastic is laid down and that's the barrier. So we have a lot of we have handymen that we just use that do it and I think do an okay job. But like you said, years down the road, I'm not sure.
Beatles Property Maintenance has done a lot of work for us, and Doggone Mold has done work for my parents. Now, Doggone Mold tends to be higher, but I can vouch and say under my parents' house, which was built in 2016 by a builder, not us, no vapor barrier, no sump pump. It was raining really bad one day, and my dad noticed that the neighbor had a pump underneath and was pumping water out. And so he called me, and I went over and opened the door, and there was like 3.5 feet of water in their crawl space. So Doggone Mold came out. They had to spray the whole house, vapor barrier, sump pump, and I mean, it is immaculate. Now, it was probably 3 times higher than another company, but it's done absolutely 100% correct. And I know some people don't like them. We all have horror stories. But as far as that company, and there's one other company, and I can't think of their name, but a lot of times they will actually come out and they will get in a full hazmat suit and they will actually paint the whole underside of the house with kills. And it makes everything super clean and super neat, and it's awesome. Like, they'll kill everything.
That's service master.
Might be, but and Stacy, I think, did some new builds for a builder in Marshfield, so she can vouch for this. Marshfield is like super flat and super marshy. But that's where we're building mom and dad's new house. And we actually dumped 10 inches of clean rock in their crawl space because the water does not stop. So what we did was we actually sank the sump pump, raised the rock level up. So the water's actually still running under, but it's all under the rock, and then we vapor barrier it. So, I mean, there's just a lot of factors that go into that. And their crawl space also went from 32 inches to 6'4" because that's how bad the dirt was.
I use a
So-
company called No Mo Mold. And I've had really good luck and experiences with him. And I hate even telling everybody that because he's not going to be super booked up. But but he's a lot cheaper than Doggone Mold. And I use them too, but they're just so much cheaper and they do a really good job.
Well, so one of the reasons that I asked that is thinking ahead for a seller who knows that they have an issue in their crawl space. They want to make those repairs before listing. And so, you know, I know when I'm helping a buyer, we're catching that in inspection and making those repairs after the fact. But if a seller wants to make those repairs before, do they need any kind of inspection, or can they call one of these companies out to do the inspection and then make the repairs?
Yep,
Okay.
just call them.
Couple online, so I'll ask those really quick. Okay, first question online. Is there much savings in building a house versus regular home?
Okay, so
Shop
we
house.
have built a couple houses, yeah, shed house. But what people realize when you say house, a lot of times people are looking on Pinterest and they see this thing that looks like a shop on the outside, but inside it looks like this beautiful Johnny Morris structure. So it depends on what you're wanting. I mean, it completely depends on what someone's wanting. Are they wanting it to have a garage on one side and then living quarters on another side? You also need to look at the county and make sure that they're going to be okay with that type of living. So there are so many questions that go into that. I have known a lot of people that want to just get some acreage and just build a house. And then at the end of it, it's like, wow, they could have built a really amazing home because now they've got, I mean, they have an upstairs and a downstairs and they've got granite everywhere. And those are awesome houses as well. So I think it completely depends on the spectrum that you're thinking.
Yeah.
Honestly, what we've noticed is the cheapest way to build right now is to do patio homes because you don't have the structure of the subfloor and all of that. Concrete hasn't gone up that much. They're already there anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have some level lots that we're going to be building like just concrete slab homes on, and that eliminates a lot of your lumber costs.
Because I was going to say, metal's gone up quite a bit, hasn't it, Justin? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, also high.
Okay, and the next question, can someone give advice on rock clauses before construction starts? And I've never heard of a rock clause. So Ron, if you want to type more
Our
information
rock
into that.
clause actually comes in the contract with our excavator. He charges $150 an hour on top to get rid of it. So I don't know. Again, I'm spec built, so we end up eating that cost. But I don't know as far as like a custom home.
Yeah, on a custom home, I don't know about, I would think there may be something in that, but I think most of the spec home builders kind of have an idea before they even buy the lot if there's going to be rock on it. And I know that one spec builder, he worked with the developer. He's like, I know there's rock in here. Are you gonna give me a better price? And so he worked something out with the developer so it's not passed on when he builds the spec house.
Okay, does anybody else have any last questions? Okay, thank you guys so much for your time. This was so valuable. Thank you again. Yeah. Be on the lookout for our next top agent mastermind or individual agent mastermind next month. I believe we're going to do rookies. So all of the rookies within KW, what they've learned throughout their years. So awesome. Thanks, guys.